Hello everybody. How are you? I hope you're well. Look, surprise! I was talking about changing a few things. Oops, sorry. My footrest was just tipping over sideways. It's just a little wee old CD holder which sits this way. It's got quite a stable floor. But if I get my foot too much to one end and lean on it, the whole of me tips because I'm leaning on it unintentionally. Anyway, totally distracted there. So I did actually say recently that I was going to give it a go to actually change some of my setup a little bit. Now, unfortunately, I've got some weird thing going on over here with the edge. Yes, my fingers are disappearing, but the background image is still there. I can't do anything about this beam here just because how far away my camera is from my green screen means that I can't actually turn it like this because otherwise you get this whole light spill over here from out on the extra space. This is what I talk about. My office is on the mezzanine. This is the handrail along here that divides where I am from downstairs. That's our living room down there. And underneath me is the kitchen and the back of the laundry. So, and all this stuff here that you can see, that's stuff that needs sorting and dealing with. Yeah, so that's us. This is where we are. We just make the most of the space that we've got, don't we? Yeah, I'm just going to see if I can... That looks a little bit better. Sometimes it just gets a little bit weird. Now, yes, I am wearing a t-shirt that says something, and because of where I am sitting and how well zoomed in or otherwise my computer is, that's what I could change. Because of that, it does mean that you get to see what's written on my t-shirt, which says, I never want to hold again. And it's a t-shirt from Rocket Lab, which is an American and New Zealand company that does small rockets up into space, and they up into the, yeah, I suppose it's space. And they do things like they take small payloads up where the payload is just for that contractor usually. Whereas if those sort of people are wanting to send stuff up into space, like satellites and stuff like that, usually the stuff that Rocket Lab carries is the size of the load that they take, which these same people would otherwise want taken anyway. If it goes up on something like a SpaceX rocket, which is ginormous, if they do that, then getting their goods placed in the right place is not so much of a priority for the rocket supplier because they have big things that they're taking up, which means that they can't focus on placing the satellites exactly where it is that the people who are sending them up want them to be. And so I just got this t-shirt because I was listening to, I think it was the first commercial launch that no, it wasn't. It was one of the early launches that they did, and they have a part of the sequence where they have to check up on certain details and make sure that it's going to be okay, and someone is sitting there reading a particular set of information, and they can put in hold points, which means that if something isn't meeting the right criteria, we can get to this stage of the countdown process, and that's a hold point, and if all those pieces add up properly, we can go further, and that person is making the call. And if it doesn't, then we wait there at that stage of the getting ready process. Now, this is the actual launch process. We wait there at that point until the requirements are met, and then we carry on. And they have a series of these, and they're called hold points. Anyway, so they're getting ready to do this launch, and because it's this... A lot of them, the people are based in New Zealand. The launch control was based in New Zealand for this particular one, as far as I know. But the staff are international in New Zealand, but also overseas, but mainly, I think, at the time in New Zealand. Anyway, so you've got the person who's talking through certain parts of it might be American. The one who's telling you on the YouTube live stream what's going on might be an American. And so you're getting this American accent and seeing the gorgeous graphics, showing this is the stage that we're at. And they show the beautiful shots of the rocket sitting on Launch Pad 1 down at Mahia Peninsula. And you've got the ocean in the background, and you've got this rocket standing up in the middle, but still at a bit of a distance. And all between the rocket and where the camera is, this particular shot that I'm thinking of, is just green paddocks. And they have sheep, they have cows, you can hear the birds singing, sometimes you can hear bees buzzing by, all this sort of stuff. And this is just the ambient noise in the background from this particular camera angle. But anyway, you get to see all these gorgeous things, and they change shots and all this sort of stuff while they've got this narration going on of the different processes. And then part of the time you actually get to hear what's going on in launch control, which is where they will have one person is calling out a question, and then another person will be giving their response to say what's appropriate for the stage that they're at, all that sort of stuff. And so one of the guys, the one who was doing the question where they were drawing in information from different departments, was a Kiwi. And so he's talking with his accent, which is probably more similar to mine than half of my listeners. And then the chap who was meant to be giving him this particular response was an American who his ears weren't quite tuned to the New Zealand accent at this point. And so there's this difficulty of understanding between do you require hold points, and I'm sorry, what was that you said? Do you wish for hold points? And the Kiwi is trying to get it as clearly as he can, and all this sort of stuff. Finally, the other guy actually understands him, and then he says in relief, once that moment is over, he says, "I never want to hold again," because of the difficulty with getting to this point and understanding what was going on. And it was like all about holds, and the way we as Kiwis say it compared with how he as an American was hearing it. I never want to hold again. And so we were watching the live stream on YouTube, I think it was, and then some of us were live tweeting it as well. And so I said I want a t-shirt with "I never want to hold again" written on it. And then others picked up on it. And sure enough, they did a t-shirt. I don't know if there was anyone else who was one of the initiators, but I know I was one of the early ones. So, of course, I had to get myself the t-shirt, didn't I? And it's got the Rocket Lab info logo stuffy on the back, which I can't remember what it actually says. I can't read it from here. Anyway, so that's just why I'm wearing a t-shirt that actually says something that you can read while I'm on screen. It's just one of those things, which... that was absolutely unnecessary for you guys to know, but I just sort of kind of figured that there might be some of you wondering what's going on with me reading this t-shirt. Now, in a not quite so amusing thought, I just want to let you know, I read these stories for the fun of it. I don't read these stories for a job. I make no money off any of this. And for me, it's about being able to chat with you as well as read the story. And I know it seems like a compliment when you say, I much prefer the way you read or the voice that you have compared with the audiobook narrator that I was listening to from somewhere else who happened to be American or I don't know, whatever else. But telling me not to chat when it's my live stream and my recording that I am doing for my fun, and telling me not to interrupt the story when I give you explanations of things is just rude. I am not doing this for any one individual apart from myself. I'm doing this for the fun of it. And I would like other people to be able to enjoy it. And I've had so many compliments from people saying that they actually enjoy the extra information that we give. So if you are inclined to want to hear an audiobook, please turn off my live stream and go and get yourself an audiobook and listen to that. Go and spend some time exploring and finding readers who have the accent that you like. But don't expect me to be an audiobook narrator, because I'm not. I just don't have it in me to be that. I love audiobook narration. I just don't have the skills for it. I also don't have the focus and the attention for it. I don't have the ability to get you a perfect sound set up for it. So there you go. I'm just saying, please be nice to people who are giving you something for free, i.e. a recording, their time, whatever it is they are doing for you. Don't get nasty about it and expect them to do it the way you want them to. Go and find somebody else to listen to if that's what you're after, okay? Rant over, out of mum mode now, and we'll go back to having fun. Oh, by the way, sound-wise, I'm just going to stop talking and we're just going to watch this little blue and teal sound bar here and see if it's still flickering when I stop talking. You can see it, can't you? That flicker down at that end is because we have a digger outside. I do not have a sound studio, a recording studio for perfect soundproof settings for recording. I have whatever ambient noises are around me. So sometimes you hear rain, sometimes you hear wind, sometimes you hear diggers, sometimes you hear people unloading the dishwasher or walking into the room talking because they've totally forgotten that what I do is this, to share it with you for the fun of it. Anyway, so it's one of those things. But at the same time, I also got another comment on YouTube, which was a lovely comment from someone saying, thank you so much for reading the stories, because I absolutely love them and I don't normally leave comments. So thank you for leaving the positive comments. And please let people just do what they do instead of telling them what they need to do if you're one of the other sorts of commenters, okay? Because there are people who it is the right fit for. So, enough of that. I said rant over before, but it wasn't, obviously. Anyway, we're going to carry on, and what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be reading some more of, I'm looking over here, just checking that I don't have anything weird going on over here. I'm just going to find out. I have actually been looking at other stuff. I have actually been sorting out getting things ready to read to you, but there's still always something more to do. It's never a finished work. It's like life. Life is never a finished work. Right. Right. I don't need to read any more of that. That's just a lovely little comment that somebody has left me in a private chat somewhere, which is all good. Right. We shall go back to talking and discussing what we are going to read, and I shall make sure that my phone has its I'm pretty sure it's got its sound turned off, otherwise we would have heard me chatting at me and it would have been really weird because it would have been out of sync with what you're actually listening to. We have had that happen a few times before. That's just part of the fun of this being real life and I'm a real person. Yeah. And yes, you are seeing the top of my microphone. My beloved, I'm just going to turn it around so you can see the side I see, which is really, I think it's really cool and kind of semi-retro. So this is my microphone. It's a blue ice ball. Snowball. Ice ball? Snowball. Blue snowball. Snowball Ice is the mini version of it. It's got a skinny bit at the bottom here. Now, it's in this special contraption made out of plywood and giant skewers and hair ties and more hair ties. It's in this so that it can bounce up and down, which means that if I bump my desk, the sound doesn't carry through the desk into my microphone quite as much. You still get the clatter of my keys when I'm typing, but you don't get the thunk through the desk sound. Like when you've got your ear up against a desk and someone knocks on it, it's really, really loud in your ear. You don't get that because I've got my microphone is hung up on some hair bands because I don't have a shock mount for it. But that's okay. One day I'll get one. I don't actually I kind of like the look of the one that's specifically designed for this, but I also don't, because this is a big microphone shape. It's like this big, and then you've got this ring that goes round it with elastic that suspends it, which makes the whole thing about this big, and it's just like up in your face. I don't want something that big right up around it. If it was at the bottom, yep, but I haven't yet invented a way of doing that looks smart. I will eventually. I've got a bit of an idea for one that's kind of like an angle poise light, which has the springs and a counterbalance. You've got a light that has an arm that comes up like this, and then it goes up like this, and then the light's pointing down, and you can take the light part and push it sideways, and the whole thing moves, and then it's well balanced. I want to do something like that, but I want to do it with counterbalance instead of springs, because springs are a bit of a pain to try and find the right sort. Otherwise I've got to cannibalise a light fitting, and I don't really feel like doing that because it's perfectly good light fitting. I suppose I could. That one's a bit small though. I've got a little one of my lights, this one up here, the one that shines from that side, the arms on it are only about this long, whereas I want one where the arms are more like, yeah, you can't see my hands, a bit longer, because then I can fasten it down somewhere and it can have quite a long reach and be completely out of the way, and I can move it around where I want it to go. Anyway, so what else? What have I been threatening to talk about on stream recently, because it was something that came up in chat or on Discord? Actually, I should tell you about Discord, shouldn't I? Whoopsie, wrong place. I've just got to get my cursor in the right place. Discord, So here's my Discord. Here are you've got to agree to this, the 18 plus. By engaging in chat, I hereby swear I am 18 plus or over 13 with express parental or guardian permission or guidance. As such, I will never say my age if I am under 18, whether or not it is the truth. I agree to be banned if anything I say contradicts these statements. So if you are under 18 and you say so here in my channel, you get banned because you are breaking Twitch's terms of use. You are allowed to be here if you're over 13 and under 18, as long as you have express parental or guardian permission or guidance, like they're with you. But in that case, you are required by Twitch to not mention your age, okay? If you do so, you are breaking their terms, and I can lose the right to broadcast, and I don't want that. I want to be able to still read stories. Hey, it's a nice safe place here, so why shouldn't I be able to read stories? So therefore, you are agreeing to this if you are here in my channel and chatting. Okay, good, all good. Here's another wee tip. I have a whole lot of filters and systems in place to look after the health and well-being of my community here, which is the people in chat and the people who are watching. Among those things is a restriction on any post that is put up, unless it's by me, a moderator, or someone who I have said can do so, will be under 150 characters long. That means that when you're looking at chat, you can have a whole lot of chat comes through, and it's not there's an opportunity for you to actually say something when somebody else has said a whole lot of words. Instead of it being just one big chunk of chat from another person, it's broken into smaller pieces because they write a bit, send it, write a bit, send it, write a bit, send it, which means that you get a chance to write in between in those gaps. So it's not one big wall of text from just one person, but also it's got a magical property of preventing some of the spam bots from posting. That's cool, isn't it? Just putting that restriction in place stops a whole bunch of spam bots from being able to post here. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them. There's also certain words which can't be used in my chat, just to keep it safe for the grannies with their grandkids who are wanting to just enjoy some old stories. And I like having my stories available for them, because so often when it comes to technology, grandparent age group, you know, that generation, if they want to do anything with their younger relatives, they are included in something that the younger person is already familiar with. And it's kind of like Granny's always having to do the learning and the grandchild isn't. And it's nothing that's familiar for Granny. And so what I want to do, even though we're using technology here, is have a place where they have the opportunity to share something that is more familiar to them, the grandparent types, and also other older people, obviously. You don't have to be a grandparent for this to apply to. Maybe even listen to some stories that they grew up listening to or reading themselves, that they can then share with this younger person or younger people that they're with, or even just sit and listen to themselves. And that gives them an opportunity to actually learn how to interact with a technology that maybe otherwise they wouldn't. They may otherwise find it quite scary because somebody's told them, oh, you don't want to go on Twitch because it's dangerous. There's all these dangerous people there. Well, actually, no, that's not the case. There's lots of wonderful people on Twitch. There are artists such as Squibble. She does gorgeous artwork. I really need to get it so I've got a smaller keyboard that I can put right down here so I can reach it. So Squibble does absolutely stunning artwork. She does rosy maple moths, and the Wizard of Oz illustrations, and she's got other work that she does too. She was working on her cricket cutter for making stickers today, getting it because she's wanting to get it so she can put fresh blades in it, but she has to change the blah blah blah. All the technical stuff was going on, but we were having a bit of fun actually, just sort of seeing if it was going to work, and cutting out these stickers so that they're all ready to be peeled and stuck on things when people buy them. So you can buy her artwork if you go to her Twitch channel, which I've given you a link for over in the main chat, not the one that shows on screen here, but the one that's further over, beyond where I can get my hand. If you go to her Twitch channel and follow her and look at her other information, you will find a link to her Redbubble store, which is where you can buy journals, where she's designed the covers for them. You can buy mouse mats, you know, the big desk ones that are like about this big. So you've got the mouse on one end and the keyboard, and gorgeous illustrations of New Zealand plants, and there's lollies and biscuits and all sorts of birds, all sorts of things. I love the work you do, Squibble. Of course I'm going to share it. Stickers. She does stickers based on artwork that she's done. And when you subscribe to her, when she's in the middle of streaming, she'll do a subscription illustration, which you get she's got a spinner, like I do with my headband spinner. She's got a spinner where it spins and then picks which creature the illustration will be based on. And then she rolls a dice, and the dice roll will help with choosing what sort of location or activity is going to be in the illustration, and then you, as the person who've subscribed, get to make a suggestion. Like we had today, was it today? We've had a pangolin. What was the pangolin doing? We had a platypus looking at an early Mac computer at a technology museum. Platypus today, that's right. I was thinking of the pangolin and the tamarin monkey, cotton-top tamarin, that were on the last one that I watched. So one of them was eating fettuccine, and I can't remember what the other one was doing, the pangolin was doing. But they're gorgeous, and she does a little sketch from some reference drawings that she's got, and then puts it all together and then colours it up with coloured pencils, and then she puts them over on her Discord server. And I've already told you about my Discord server, so they're gorgeous. They really are. And she does so many other things. Oh yes, that's right, picking pumpkins. That's what it was. It was fantastic. And it's just lovely, and you get to see her actually creating artwork, not just the sub-doodles, which is what she calls those, I think, but actual like oil painting, using really, really fine brushes and detailing in, plus also doing broader areas, all sorts of stuff, wonderful stuff. Hi, past shelf date, great to have you here too. So I know wonderful people on Twitch And I first got to know them on Twitch, and I consider them to be my friends because we are here on Twitch together and we get to enjoy what each other does and we chat together. Not all of them are people who are actually streamers. Some of them are just people that you see regularly in chat. Cool. Sorry, I'm just catching up on what somebody else was saying. So past shelf dates saying, hi, virtual clutter buddies wrapped up early, so here I am. Got a little Inktober drawing done too. Wonderful. Great to hear that. Delighted that you were able to come here and be part of the stream today. I shall be reading soon, I hope. I started off by having a wee bit of a rant because somebody made a comment on one of my YouTube videos about how I should just get on with reading and not interrupt myself and not chat at the beginning. And I'm like, I've never seen you before. This is the first comment you've made and you're telling me what to do because you don't want to go and pay for an audio book that has an accent that you like. No, that's not happening. I was really polite to them and just explained, well, this is just what I do. And it's part of the community that I've been nurturing, basically. But it was just, don't really need that sort of a comment being made because it's not about what they want me to do. It's about me sharing stuff with you that I have fun finding out about, that you discover new things, that we all get something out of. Yeah, people just never read channel and video descriptions, lol. Absolutely. I've got a rough reads series written at the beginning of every playlist, and I think I'm going to now have to start putting that in at the first line of every description of every video, as well as me explaining it all on YouTube. That's what I was going to do. I've rewritten my description for my YouTube channel, and I was going to read that to you. Hang on, I'll just find it. No. Actually, let's just put in here. I'm pretty sure I have a link for it, and then I can get to it from my link. That's probably easier than any other way. Right, so on my link, on my YouTube channel, which is, I'll show you up here for those of you who haven't been there before. It's this one here, YouTube.com with a / and then a C for channel and then another / and jevvnz. Jev always has 3 V's, by the way. Also, if you don't put the C in, you can put an at jevvnz without the second / So down here, this bit here, if you put here an at symbol and there you start writing the jevvnz, you don't need that / that will also get you to my channel. Cool, isn't it? Right, so if you go to my About section, which is a list of words there, I'm not quite sure what it looks like on mobile, I'm sorry. I just do so much stuff on my computer on a main monitor, and so I don't actually know what it looks like. I watch videos on my phone, but I don't go to my own channel on my phone, so I don't know what the layout is there. Right, so this is my new version of my description. Can you tell that I was miffed? Once I've finished reading, you can comment on that. You don't have to. And I'm going to put this link up here for those of you who are actually on YouTube watching this video. And if it was you and you were just hoping to get a story that was cleanly read, I apologize if you feel like I was getting at you. It's not that I was getting at you. I felt that I was being got at by not meeting what your expectations were. And I think we need to think a little bit about when we leave a comment for somebody, how it may impact them, and that they are not necessarily all professionals. They are just normal people sharing their lives with you. So if you are on YouTube and wanting to listen, you can listen. If you don't want to listen, you can go and listen to someone else. So if you're on YouTube but you want to come to my live sessions, which is where you actually get to type in the chat and I read out the comments that people make, and I also answer questions, and you get to listen to all that, but you don't get to see that part of it happening. It actually makes a lot more sense when you see it happening. Honestly, it's a lot more fun. This is the link here. So it's twitch.tv / that's the one that goes that way, this one here. /JevNZ, and Jev always has 3 V's in my name. Right, so here we go. This is my comment not my comment. I did actually answer them politely, but I did say that this is what I do and I'm not changing it for just because somebody wants it. So this is what I now have on my description of what my channel is about. Do you want to hear an old-fashioned story? Do you want to hear a story? Frozen. That's where that first started from. Do you want to hear an old-fashioned story? Basically, there are a bunch of books from the olden days, which I've capitalised. Ones that are now in the public domain, so they have differing attitudes and ways of life to modern stories. It all adds up to a bunch of fun and some lovely story discoveries. Then I've given the little extra bit of information. I've rearranged this. Some of it's the same and some of it's changed. These are rough read alouds, so you get random info and explanations, interruptions, and even plain old misreadings. Oh, and occasionally some terrible accents. Please remember, my readings don't have the polished perfection of audiobooks. It's more like bedtime stories by an easily distracted aunt. To see what books I've already read, head over to my playlist tab, as there are too many to list here, sorry, because I used to have a big long list, but I ran out of character space. So I hope that makes it a little bit clear. I should probably say a little bit more about the chatting at the beginning too. Whatever. But I figured that actually just kind of hit the way I do it a lot more clearly than I said it before, but it hadn't been quite as to the point as what I think this now is. So thank you very much for that vote of confidence, my wonderful team. I do have, and I'm just putting these links in there just for those who are new to it, or if you're watching on the Twitch VOD, which is the recordings that Twitch keeps up for two weeks afterwards, you get to see the actual chat, not the one that's on screen here, but the one that's further over that I can't point at. You get to see that if you want to, if you're watching the VOD. You don't get to see that on YouTube. On YouTube, you just get to see what I've typed in, but it doesn't give you the extra bit of information that comes into the main chat. But I'm putting this there for those of you who are in that place. I don't need 2 of those. There you go. So the extra bit of information is where I am on Twitter, on Instagram, and my Ko-fi account. So Twitter, it's actually just Jev with 3 V's, no NZ at the end, because I got in early enough that I could have a 5-character name instead of having to have a minimum of 6 characters in my name. Instagram, it's jevvn. Ko-fi is jevvn. My Throne account is also jevvn. Funny that, isn't it? I'll even prove it. jevvn. Ha! Anywhere I can, I save that as my account, just in case. It kind of makes more sense, doesn't it? Right, so if you do want to make suggestions for gifts, Squibble's given me a couple of suggestions for LED lights, and there was something else. I'm sure there was something else. My brain has gone blah, 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 blah. It happens a little bit too often. And the poppers. So I've added those to my wish list. So on Throne, what's really cool about Throne is that if you wish to, you can buy something for somebody, effectively donating it to them. Except we don't use donate that way in New Zealand because donations are to do with licensed charities, authorised charities. They have a particular tax status, and so therefore it's a legal term. So we tend to think that's why when people are talking about gifting money on Twitch, they will talk, if they're New Zealanders, sometimes they'll say donate just because that's what other people talk about, but otherwise they will say tips. Because even though we don't use tips largely in New Zealand, we know what tips are, and it doesn't have the same legal implications. Anyway, so if you did want to send me anything as a gift, I don't have to tell you my address, and I don't have to see your address when you send it to me, or your real life name. And you don't need to see my one, but I will still get the gift if it's something that's on my... Sorry, I'm pointing at my other monitor, on my Throne wish list. That's the beauty of Throne. Now, because New Zealand is a country that's outside of where most of their purchasing and stuff like that happens, when you buy me a gift there, it'll usually take a little bit longer than it would if you were in, say, the States, which is where their biggest market, the States and mainland Europe is their two biggest markets. Throne actually does the in-between with the different retailers over there. In places like New Zealand, when you buy something for me, it removes it from the wish list so I don't end up with 2 or 3 or half a dozen or 5 dozen of the same thing, unless I say that it's something I'm open to getting repeats of. But it takes it off there. It takes the money from your payment system, whatever it is that you're using. I think it's credit and debit cards. PayPal isn't actually quite set up yet, but it will eventually be. And then it makes the money available for me so that I can then order that as coming from you, from the best place for me to get it from here in New Zealand. So I'm not going to order something from a retailer over in the States if it's going to take 3 months to arrive. I'm going to order it from the little warehouse shop that's down the road, and it will be here effectively for me a bit sooner than it otherwise would have been. But it's all securely set up, and then I will open it on stream. I've already done that once. I've got a friend over in Japan who ordered this lovely they call it a cloud glass barometer. These crystals in here, when the weather changes, I'm trying to get it so I don't know, I'll just hold it still and then you can see it. These crystals in here they grow upwards towards the top of the water level, and they're gorgeous and they look all feathery, and it all depends on what the weather's like, whether it's the temperature or the barometric pressure, I don't know, something like that. There's a whole range of things that are possibly influencing it. But that's basically how it works. And so I opened that one online on stream. In fact, I had to let them know I was going to be, because they can't always be here when I'm streaming, just because there are times when they are at work and I'm streaming. They live closer to my time zone than any of the other overseas streamers that regularly interact with me here on my stream. I'm just looking for something I need. Sorry. Yeah, doing stream housekeeping. It is something that you should do. Keeping an eye on stuff that's going on in your channel, all that sort of stuff. Come on, where is it? And then I'll carry on. There it is. Right, sorted. Okay, so if you look sideways, sideways and up over here, right up here, Codex is a group of streamers that I am part of. And the particular thing that we have in common, which was what makes us Codex, is we all read public domain books, or books that we have express permission to read. We are not violating anyone's copyright, and is what that means. So often if we're reading an ebook, it will be something from Project Gutenberg, which I've just given you a link for, and so often it will be something from Project Gutenberg. If it's a physical book, it'll be something like these, kind of like the ones behind me. These ones are even older than my books, believe it or not. So these are the sort of books that I normally read from if I get the choice. I have a whole lot of books in boxes downstairs in storage at the moment. Most of them aren't as old as this, because some of them are books I was given when I was growing up, things like that. So this one here is over 100 years old, and this one's over 100 what did I say it was before? I'm sure I told you before. 125 years old. There you go. And they are still around. They're not in a museum or anything else like that. They are just real books that we have in our house. When I say real, I mean physical books. E-books are just as real. It's just you can't physically smell the pages, run your fingers over the print, feel the indentations if it's done on a letterpress type printing press or anything like that. So there's a whole lot of stuff like that where there are books that I will be reading more physical copies, but otherwise I read them often from Project Gutenberg. That's what we have in common, those of us who are part of Codex as the reading team. Now, here's their link. Actually, here's their two links. So the first link is for Codex's Twitch reading team. And if you follow that link, you'll actually see whoever's currently live. It'll show you who's live. There'll be a red dot next to their name and possibly how many people are in their channel at the moment. And it's usually got whoever's live nearest to the top of the list will actually be showing on that same page at the same time. But you can get to any of our readers there. We now have 11 readers in the official Codex reading team, so that's awesome. There's a couple more have actually signed in properly now and agreed to the terms, because we have to agree that we are going to not violate anyone's copyright terms. That's part of the ethos of Codex. But we also have a Discord server, which is in that link there. And the Discord server is great for finding out about the book club. And when we didn't have it the first Sunday of the month, is that when it was? I think it's the first Sunday, not the last Sunday of the month, because the chap who normally organises it had not been well and then had a whole lot of extra stuff that they needed to do, so it didn't get organised this month. But usually when it's not summertime in North America, then it's once a month. And it's usually held on stream on the first Sunday of the month. And you can find out all about it in the book club's channel of the Codex Twitch. Codex Discord server. But also there's a security channel there, and that will tell you all about the way you can look after your stream if you're a streamer, or if you're a moderator for a stream. It can tell you how to keep an eye out for behaviors of bots and other things like this, and what you can do about it. Like, do you block and then ban a user, or do you ban and then block a user? All sorts of stuff. Actually, that one I don't know if that was explained there or not. It's a question I've asked the person who wrote them, which is Goriki, and you can check. You can even ask there. So even if you're not wanting to be part of book club or anything else like that, but you want to find out about stream security, go there, join. It's open to anyone to join. So past shelf date saying, yesterday I went to the Codex site. The only way to find out if anyone is streaming is to follow each of you. So when I look at the left column, I see the little red meatball of live streaming. Very good. That's the way. If you follow the Twitch team link that I gave you, which is the first of the two in the Codex information that I just put up there, that should also show you who the different ones are. If you just have that, if you bookmark that, then you can actually go and have a look at that list without having to go to each of the different ones. I wish there were a schedule, but I guess it'd be too much work. Yeah, because most of them don't actually read as scheduled as I do. It's not very often, if I can help it, that I don't stream on the days I say I'm going to stream. So I stream, those of you who don't know, I stream 3 days a week. I stream New Zealand, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 p.m. through till, it used to be 4:15, then it was 4:30, then it was 4:45. At the moment it's 5:15 or 5:30 even. Whatever. It's an hour and a bit usually. So that's when I stream. If you go and look at my schedule tab on Twitch, it will show you when that is in your time zone, unless you're using a VPN. It will show you for whatever the time zone is for the location that you've got your VPN set to. Just a wee quirk in case you need it. But yeah, most of the others don't have enough of a schedule to actually write one up. But if you bookmark the Twitch Codex team page, then you will actually be able to come back to it easy enough to see who's there. depending on if you're watching within the Twitch app or if you're actually watching through your browser, but it's a good way to do it. If you open the page, the Twitch page in your browser, oh, I've just found a glow-in-the-dark shape that's been sitting on my light for ages. Shall we turn the lights off and see if it glows? Excuse me a moment. Oh, let's see if it's going to glow. Not really. It's not very glowy. It should be glowing. That's not glowing. Okay, they're cheap ones then. Not much glow material in them. Yeah, I'm so sorry that happened for you that way past shelf date. Hopefully you'll be able to have enough of a look at what they say about what they're doing, because some of them do have schedules written up, but then they can be a little bit loose with what they're doing on the schedule. So you'll be able to find someone who's regularly live when it does actually work for you with your new job time and all that sort of stuff going on. So we'll just see how that goes. Hopefully you do. That would be really nice. Yeah, it would be really cool if there could be a bit more information about when people are going to be streaming. So I think I covered all the things I meant to tell you about and too much more. So let's get on with reading a book. Go on. Oh, no, I didn't say who I am to those who are new here. Hi, I'm Jev. I read old children's books like the ones I just showed you, and I often read them off this void. No, this is actually an iPad mini. It's a first generation iPad mini, and I still have it because it works. I can browse to Project Gutenberg and I can download to it the ebooks that I need, the EPUB style ebooks that I need, and the iBooks app, which is built into its operating system, as is the browser, still works for reading books. I can't update it. I can't add new apps to it, but it works for exactly what I want it to, and it doesn't go online any other time. I don't go online with it. I don't use it for anything else. So it's great because I'm keeping it out of the landfill, which is awesome. I like when we can do that sort of thing. I've just realised the colour of those icons is wrong. Up here, my YouTube, Facebook and Twitter icons are all the wrong colour. Darn. I'm going to have to go and edit them. Not now. Oop, sorry. Whacking my microphone. I will have to go and do a colour edit on those. I can do that. I know how to. Change it to my teal, which is more like this colour here. We'll get there. Right. I've got a few things I realised I need to change on my overlay. So up here, this image that's up there, I wish this image was wider. That book cover there, that's the nearest I've been able to find to one of the old versions of the cover of the book that I'm about to read. So I have 3 tips if you're new here. 3 is a special number for me for some reason. Apparently, I've only just discovered this in the last year because I keep mentioning it. Right, so tip number 1 is get drinks. Tip number 2 is get snacks. Tip number 3 is get comfortable. So drinks. I have water. I always have water. Water is essential. Water keeps your brain and your body going, and if you read or if you're talking out loud a lot, it makes your throat work far better. It stops it getting too worn out. It stops it getting those sort of problems that you get. No, not that one. So, in addition to water, I have my favourite drink, which is coffee. This is the remainder. Hopefully I'll finish it today in time. This is the remainder of today's iced coffee, which in our house means a double shot of espresso with a little bit of sugar dissolved into it. Icing sugar is the easiest to dissolve, and topped up with cold milk out of the fridge. Easy, yummy, because the weather's getting a bit warm over here now. So hence the iced coffee. Also, I have another favourite drink of mine. Not the favourite, but another favourite. I just have to find something to sit it on because it's dribbly. I had a thing here before. Where did it go? Excuse me. I lost 2, 3 headbands earlier on. I was looking everywhere for them, and then I finally found them. I took down the butterfly wings that were behind me when I was doing the Halloween streams, and hadn't realised, I had at the time I first moved the wings, but hadn't realised afterwards, it didn't sink in, that the headbands, which had been sitting just below it, had caught hold of the hem of the butterfly wings and had just been moved sideways to where I had put them on the floor out of the way, and they were hidden underneath it. And I was like, where are those headbands? I need to find them in case somebody redeems them. Where are they? Where are they? You know, the pink sparkly unicorn one, the glitter on it catches on the threads. And there was the cat's ears glitter from a previous stream, and there was something else. And it was like, where are they? I can't find them. And then I found them after I stopped worrying quite so much. So, right, the other drink I have with me today is lemon and pyro. And today's mug is meant to be pink at the top and then purple when this is cold enough. So it's just looking kind of brownish at the moment, whatever. So, lemon and pyro, you can look it up for yourself. I was going to do a whole lot of links for these sort of things for you. So I'm just going to paste the link in here for you rather than having it as a command. Oh no, I don't want that. That's way too long. I totally forgot that when you copy from the Google search itself, it gives you all this gobbledygook. There you go. That's the link for lemon and pyro, and it's got some cute pictures of bottles at different eras and the big giant L&P bottle and all that sort of stuff, so you can look that up for yourself. I'm just going to shut my YouTube channel because I don't need that open. I really appreciated the fact that there was this other person had given me such an encouraging comment about the fact that they don't usually comment on YouTube videos, and they really felt that they just, it meant so much to them that I read these stories and shared them. So, it, you know, swings and roundabouts, one balances out the other. Okay, story. Tip 2. So tip 1 is drinks. We've had water, we've had L&P, we've had iced coffee. I don't always have 3 drinks. Tip 2 is snacks. Get snacks. So what do we have for snacks today? What have you got for snacks today? Does Squibble have her snacks? Or did Squibble remember to get her snacks? That's a good question. What do I have today? I have sour grapes. I'm just going to be noisy. This is the food soundy one, you know, like I've said before. Fabulicious grape sherbet crunch. And it's actually really yummy. But the crunch part of it is a bit kind of weird, I find. Anyway, already had snacks, thinking about getting some Coke. Good on you. Go for it. It's a pinkish purple on the packet, but the actual snacks themselves, it looks almost black on screen, but it's a dark purple, and I like that colour. I like it more than the colour of the packet. There's also some normal licorice in there, but I'm not pulling that out because it's one of those long finish licorices, and it's really yummy, but I don't want to try and struggle to get it back into my snack pot. Oh, this is my snack pot with my my coffee QR code. This treat jar is actually available to you if you live in New Zealand from thewarehouse.co.nz. Look up in the pet section for treat jar and you could have your very own. I love going somewhere and seeing things that they have decided this is really cool for using for this purpose, and I look at it and I go, oh yeah, but we could do this with it, and we could do this with it, and we could do those and that, and I can put it together with something else and do something else with it. It's so much fun. It's so much fun being me and living inside my head. I hope it's fun for you living inside your head. And if it's not, I hope you can find something that's fun for you. Right. And they're chewy. Right. And they're slightly sour. I like sour, but not all sour for sweets. Right. Get drinks, get snacks, get comfortable. And this is the reminder to get comfortable. I have this lovely purple cushion here with floral patterns on it. They're actually flocked, which is why they don't reflect. Goosebumps, anyone? Right, we'll get on with reading, shall we? Enough of that. Just need to unlock this book. So here we go. Under an hour. Yay, we're getting there. In case you're wondering, I usually start, technically the stream is turned on 10 minutes before the hour because, and if you arrive in that first 10 minutes, Twitch will show, if there is any advertising, Twitch will show you those ads before I actually start going live and talking, when it's just got the starting soon screen with the countdown. Twitch will often show ads in that slot, which means that you don't get interrupted with ads when I very first start talking. That was my idea behind it anyway. And also I did notice back in the days when I was getting a lot more bots arriving on my channel, that if they were going to arrive, they usually arrived at about 7 minutes after I technically started streaming, as in hit the start streaming button in OBS. Another tip for those of you who are streamers, if you find that you've got lots of bots arriving, see if there's a pattern to their timing. If it's like a certain number of minutes after you, especially if they're right at the beginning of the stream, see if they arrive a certain amount of time after the stream has started. Because when people were first setting up those sort of bots, follow bots and things like that, that would come and sit in your channel, they would initially just scan across Twitch and be dropped into live streams once a stream went live, because it triggers stuff through the system, the way Twitch works. And so then they realized that people were getting wise to that, and so they actually would put a delay on it. But usually the delay is something like 7 minutes, because I think there's a certain time cycle for when notifications come through from Twitch, and it was to do with that triggering system. And so I found that because they nearly all happened between 5 and 7 minutes after I'd started, well, let's just make my start that little bit longer, and it gives me a chance to see them, get them out of the way before we get on with the reading. So there we go. So we are reading English Fairytales, which has had that as a cover at some stage in its life. The copy that I have, the digital copy I have, doesn't have illustrations. I've kind of found some online, but they are PNGs with a transparent background, and they are black line drawings, which means if I put them up here, you'll see part of them here on Little Miss Adelaide, and over here on these old books, and down here on Little Mr. Quest Sprout, but you won't see the drawing here because it's transparent and the drawing itself is black. And they're not particularly relevant anyway. They're just from one particular edition of the book, so I'm going to ignore that. We are going to start with reading the first of the English fairy tales. That it was a book compiled by Joesph Jacobs. I did find out something intriguing about him. I'll just find him for you. And the thing that initially surprised me was that he even had a Wikipedia listing. I'll give it to you. And then you can be intrigued as well. So I know of him because he did these English fairy tales, more than one edition. He also did Celtic fairy tales, and I think there's more than one of them. He's done Scandinavian fairy tales. He went round the place collecting up fairy tales, fables from different countries, like the Grimm brothers did. The Brothers Grimm, you know, Grimm's fairy tales. He did the same sort of thing. Slightly different era. He was born in 1854 and died in 1916. Guess where he's from? And you're not allowed to tell me if you've already looked. Knowing that these are all European-centric? He was born in Australia. It's like, huh? What? But then, a lot of people from New Zealand and Australia used to go over to England for their education, tertiary education, university, college, that sort of stuff. So I'll read a little snippet about him and then I'll get on with reading the story. He was an Australian folklorist, translator, literary critic, social scientist, historian, and writer of English literature, who became a notable collector and publisher of English folklore. There you go. How odd. Jacobs was born in Sydney, went on to popularise some of the world's best-known versions of English fairy tales, including Jack and the Beanstalk, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, The Three Little Pigs, Jack the Giant Killer, and The History of Tom Thumb. He published his English fairy tale collections, English Fairytales, in 1890, and More English Fairy Tales in 1893, but also went on after and in between both books to publish fairy tales collected from continental Europe as well as Jewish, Celtic and Indian fairy tales, which made him one of the most popular writers of fairy tales for the English language. He was also an editor for journals and books on the subject of folklore. And then it goes on, all sorts of things. He actually had a Jewish background. He was a Jewish chap. But he was really, really, really interested in all these different sorts of things. And so he looked into it and collected these stories. In fact, in the introduction, the foreword for the first book, he talks about how basically there doesn't seem to be very many English fairy tales at all. And then he collected them up and found, as he was collecting, he found that there were more and more and more. It's one of those things, you kind of take it for granted, the stuff that you know, and don't realise that, like part of it may also be that an assumption that the English fairy tales that we know, that he knew, he may have assumed that they were originally German ones from the Brothers Grimm and their versions. Sorry, I'm just moving my mouse mat because it's irritating me. Right, carrying on. Reading the first story in English Fairy Tales, the collection by Joseph Jacobs, published in 1890, Tom Tit Tot. So we'll see how it goes. Once upon a time there was a woman. Okay. And she baked 5 pies. And when they came out of the oven, they were that overbaked the crusts were too hard to eat. Oh dear. Have you ever done that when you're baking? It's such a waste. All the work that goes into making pies, making up the pastry and everything, and then you overcook them. Oh dear. Not fun. So she says to her daughter, "Daughter," says she, "put you them there pies on the shelf and leave him there a little and they'll come again." She meant, that the crust would get softer. Actually, it does. Hard things soften as they go stale. Soft things harden when they go stale. Clever lady. But the girl says to herself, "Well, if they'll come again, I'll eat them now." And she set to work and ate them all, first and last. Oh dear. Well, come supper time, the woman said, "Go you and get one of them there pies. I dare say they've come again now." The girl went and she looked, and there was nothing but the dishes. She'd know. So back she came and says, "No, they ain't come again." "Not one of 'em," says the mother. "Not one of 'em," says she. "Well, come again or not come again," she said, "I'll have one for supper." "But you can't if they ain't come," said the girl. She doesn't want to admit she ate them all. How many was it? 5 pies. I don't think they mean the little single portion pies. Oh dear. "Come again or not come again," says the woman, "I'll have one for supper." "But you can't if they ain't come," said the girl. "But I can," says she. "Go you and bring the best of him." "Best or worst?" says the girl. "I've ate him all, and you can't have one till that's come again." Well, the woman, she was done, and she took her spinning to the door to spin. And as she span, she sang, My daughter ate 5 pot, 8... told you that I muck up accents. My daughter ate five pies today. My daughter ate five pies today. The king was coming down the street, and he heard her sing, but what she sang he couldn't hear. So he stopped and said, "What was that you were singing, my good woman?" The woman was ashamed to let him hear what her daughter had been doing, so she sang instead that, "My daughter has spun five skeins today. My daughter has spun five skeins today." "Stars o' mine," said the king, "I never heard tell of anyone that could do that." A skein is like, we know balls of wool. Well, a ball of wool is wound from a skein of wool, or more than a skein may actually produce more than one, but it's the long loops. You spin on a spinning wheel, and then you use a winding thing to put your skein together, or you see pictures of people holding their hands out like this, and the wool is being wound around them by somebody, or it's being unwound from their hands into a ball. That's a skein, this bundle of threads. You can buy a skein of embroidery cotton or embroidery silk, and that's where it's the long bundle like this, which has the little wee paper wraps around each end to hold it together. So skein, S-K-E-I-N, is that shape of fibre all laid into lots of loops and then bundled together. So that must be what that's about. Then he said, "Look you here, I want a wife, and I'll marry your daughter. But look you here," says he, 11 months out of the year she shall have all she likes to eat, and all the gowns she likes to get, and all the company she likes to keep, but the last month of the year she'll have to spin 5 skeins every day, and if she don't, I shall kill her." I don't know that that's the sort of person I really want to be married to, but okay. "All right," says the woman, for she thought what a grand marriage that was. And as for the 5 skeins, when the time came, there'd be plenty of ways of getting out of it, and likeliest he'd have forgotten all about it. Well, so they were married, and for 11 months the girl had all she liked to eat, and all the gowns she liked to get, and all the company she liked to keep. But when the time was getting over, she began to think about the skeins and to wonder if he had 'em in mind, but not one word did he say about 'em, and she thought he'd wholly forgotten 'em. However, the last day of the last month he takes her to a room she'd never set eyes on before. There was nothing in it but a spinning wheel and a stool. And says he, "Now, my dear, here you'll be shut in tomorrow with some victuals and some flax." Flax is what you use for making linen. Not New Zealand flax, European flax. I don't think I've still got a flax flower photo. Let's see if we can find one. It is actually relevant. I wonder if I can find something that shows the two side by side. Not really. It's a twiggy sort of a plant. And the seeds that we know as linseed are the seeds from the flax plant. Linseed, the seed of the linen plant. Anyway, so it has these long fibres. And the fibres in it are used to make flax. Just trying to find a relevant picture that's going to show you enough information. Anyway, it has these lovely sky blue flowers. Here's a picture. We'll save this one and then I can show it to you. Images. No, wrong one. specific books. That's the one. Folk and Fairy Tales. So the flax will be in whatever form it is that they usually use in this context before actually spinning it into flowers. Not flowers, I'm seeing flowers out of the corner of my eye. Into linen thread, which is then woven into linen fabric. And so the linen thread that Squibble has been using for her bookmaking would have originally been spun and then wound like into skeins and stuff like that. I'll move this up here where you can see it. No, I'll move it over here. It's a different place to where I used to put it. So see these thin stems here? These are the stems that become, that the fibre is harvested from. It has these beautiful blue flowers. They're they're paler than this. This is a very intense look. Well, on my monitor, a very intense version of sky blue. And then the flowers finish flowering, then the seeds are produced, and then they harvest the seeds, which is a pain to harvest because the seeds fall out very easily. And they're also very slippery. And then if you're doing linen, it's actually the stems that are harvested rather than the seeds. I mean, they harvest some of the seeds so you can plant them again next year, obviously. And then they are turned into linen fibre, and then from fibre into linen fabric. So there you go. But I think it would be quite a pain to produce it. There was nothing in it but a spinning wheel and a stool. And says he, now, my dear, here you'll be shut in tomorrow with some victuals, that's food and drink, and some flax, and if you haven't spun 5 skeins by the night, your head'll go off. And away he went about his business. Well, she was that frightened. She'd always been such a gatless girl. Gatless. I've never heard that word before. Most of the words we have here are words, I'm typing, are words that I'm kind of familiar with. I just want a sharper definition to be able to explain it to you. So let's see if we can find this one. Gatless. Just check that I'm spelling it correctly. Gatless, Gatless. Let's see if this has a definition in my dictionary. Nope, it doesn't. Hang on, let's see if I've got dictionary turned on. Dictionary, yes, dictionary's turned on. Okay, so we're going to look up gatless. Sorry, it's part of the me setting up the new overlay. It's like, is it actually not there, or is it just because the word's not in the dictionary? A state of being carried away by overwhelming emotion. That sounds pretty on the dot. That's accurate. She was frightened. She'd always been such a gatless girl that she didn't so much as know how to spin, and what was she to do tomorrow with no one to come nigh her to help her? She sat down on a stool in the kitchen, and Lord, how she did cry. However, all of a sudden she heard a sort of a knocking low down on the door. I wonder if this is the basis of Rumpelstiltskin's story. She upped and oped it, and what should she see but a small little black thing with a long tail. Rumpelstiltskin's a small man. This is not. This picture I have, but I need to see if I can find something to put as a background to it. I do have this picture. Other, find. Yes. Now. That's right. Trying to get it where I can see it, and I go and click somewhere else so I can't see it. Properties. Let's see if I can show it to you here. Yeah, there you go. There he is. That's what I was talking about with the transparency. A little black thing. a small little black thing with a long tail that looked up at her right curious and that said, "What are you a-crying for?" "What's that to you?" she said. "Never mind that," said "Never you mind," that said, "but tell me what you're a-crying for." "That won't do me no good if I do," said she. "You don't know that," that said, and twirled that's tail round. He's got the word that for every usage of its pronoun. "Well," says she, "that won't do harm. That won't do no harm. If that won't do no good," and she upped and told about the pies and the skeins and everything. "This is what I'll do," said the little black thing. I'll come to your window every morning and take the flax and bring it spun at night." "What's your pay?" says she. At least she knows that you don't get anything for nothing. That looked out of the corner of that's eyes, and that said, "I'll give you 3 guesses every night to guess my name, and if you haven't guessed it before the month's up, you shall be mine." Yeah, and sounding very much like Rumpelstiltskin, but this one's got a tail. Well, she thought she'd be sure to guess that's name before the month was up. "All right," she says, "I agree." "All right," that says, and law, how that twirled that's tail. Well, the next day her husband took her into the room, and there was the flax and the day's food. "Now there's the flax," said he, "and if that ain't spun up this night, off goes your head." And then he went out and locked the door. He'd hardly gone when there was a knocking against the window. She upped and she oped it, and there, sure enough, was the little old thing sitting on the ledge. "Where's the flax?" says he. "There it be," says she, and she gave it to him. Well, come the evening, a knocking came again to the window. She upped and she oped it, and there was the little old thing with 5 skeins of flax on his arm. So now we're getting his. This is... Oh dear. Oh dear. "Here it be," says he, and he gave it to her. "Now, what's my name?" says he. "What, is that Bill?" she said. "No, it ain't," says he, and he twirled his tail. "Is that Ned?" says she. "No, that ain't," says he, and he twirled his tail. "Well, is it Mark?" says she. "No, that ain't," says he, and he twirled his tail harder, and away he flew. Well, when her husband came in, there were the 5 skeins ready for him. "I see I shan't have to kill you tonight, my dear," says he. "You'll have your food and your flax in the morning," says he, and away he goes. Well, every day the flax and the food were brought, and every day that there little black impet, like a limpet, but an impet, a little imp. That little black impet used to come mornings and evenings, and all the day the girl sat trying to think of names to say to it when it came at night. But she never hit on the right one, and as it got towards the end of the month, the impet began to look so maliceful. The use of words is intriguing. Maliceful, and that twirled that's tail faster and faster each time she gave a guess. At last it came to the last day but one. The impet came at night along with the 5 skeins, and that said, "What, ain't you got my name yet?" "Is that Nicodemus?" says she. "No, tain't," says. "Is that Samuel?" says she. Excuse me. "No, tain't," that says. "Ah, well, is that Methuselah?" says she. "No, tain't that neither," that says. Then that looks at her with that's eyes like a coal of fire. And that says, "Woman, there's only tomorrow night, and then you'll be mine." And away it flew. Well, she felt that horrid. However, she heard the king coming along the passage. In he came, and when he sees the 5 skeins, he says he, "Well, my dear," says he, "I don't see but what you'll have your skeins ready tomorrow night as well. And as I reckon I shan't have to kill you, I'll have supper in here for tonight." So they brought supper and another stool for him. and down the two sat. Well, he hadn't eaten but a mouthful or so when he stops and begins to laugh. "What is it?" says she. "Why," says he, "I was out a-hunting today, and I got away to a little place in the wood I'd never seen before, and there was an old chalk pit. And I heard a kind of humming, so I got off my hobby," that's his horse, "and I went right quiet to the pit, and I looked down. Well, what should there be but the funniest little black thing you ever set eyes on? And what was he doing but that had a little spinning wheel, and that was spinning wonderful fast, and twirling that's tail, and as that span, that sang, Nimmy, nimmy, not, my name's Tom Tit Tot." Ooh. Well, when the girl heard this, she felt as if she could have jumped out of her skin for joy, but she didn't say a word. Next day, that there little thing looked so maliceful when he came for the flax, and when night came, she heard that knocking against the window panes. She opened the window, and that came right in on the ledge. That was grinning from ear to ear, and oh, that's tail was twirling round so fast. "What's my name?" that says, as that gave her the skeins. "Is that Solomon?" she says, pretending to be afeard. "No, tain't," that says, and that came further into the room. "Well, is that Zebedee?" she says again. "No, it ain't," says the impet, and then that laughed and twirled that's tail till you couldn't hardly see it. "Take time, woman," that says, "next guess and you're mine," and that stretched out that's black hands at her. Well, she backed a step or two, and she looked at it, and then she laughed out, and says she, pointing her finger at it, "Nimmy, nimmy, not, your name's Tom Tit Tot." Well, when that heard her, that gave an awful shriek, and away that flew into the dark, and she never saw it any more. And that's the end of the tale. There you go. Yeah, very, very similar to Rumpelstiltskin. I'm not sure which one was actually the originator of the story, but I haven't heard that one before. Iced coffee, yeah. Not quite as cold as it was, but it's still good. And L&P, yeah. So I shall read one more, and that's the second one in the book. The book is English Fairytales, collected by Joesph Jacobs, and we are reading the second story, which is The Three Sillies. The Three Sillies. Here we go. Once upon a time there was a farmer and his wife. There was a farmer and his wife who had one daughter, and she was courted by a gentleman. Every evening he used to come and see her and stop to supper at the farmhouse, and the daughter used to be sent down into the cellar to draw the beer for supper. Yeah, how many children realise she only has 11 months and 1 day to live? I know. Fairy tales and fables were harsh. They really were. But then life was pretty harsh, and children were often a lot more aware of life and death and stuff around them. They weren't as protected as they are these days, and so it probably didn't come across quite as harshly as what we're used to. I don't know. Maybe. That's the way I've always thought of it. The daughter used to be sent down into the cellar to draw the beer for supper. So one evening she had gone down to draw the beer, and she happened to look up at the ceiling while she was drawing. That means, pouring it out into the whatever container they take it upstairs in. And she looked up at the ceiling while she was drawing, and she saw a mallet stuck in one of the beams. A mallet is like a big wooden hammer. It must have been there a long, long time, but somehow or other she had never noticed it before. And she began thinking. Let's see if I can find that word mallet for you, because I really want to know that this thing works. Mallet, a type of hammer with a larger than usual head made of wood, rubber or similar non-iron materials used by woodworkers for driving a tool such as a chisel, a kind of maul. A maul is the same sort of thing. And I will need to move that sometime, and probably not now. Mallet, to beat or strike with a mallet. Yeah, that's not really helpful. But okay. Dictionary, need to find my dictionary app. I've got it here. I'm just doing this now because I want to make sure I remember. Otherwise, I'm not going to remember. I can see why I had it where it was, but it's not what I want, where I want it to be now. Let's see if this is going to work a bit better. We'll test it, shall we? What word shall I test it with? Let's go think of another word. Maul. M-A-U-L. Let's try typing in word, because that's the command. There, that's more like where I want it to be, kind of. A heavy, long-handled hammer used for splitting logs by driving a wedge into them, or in combat. That will probably be about right. To handle someone or something in a rough way. Yeah, when like dogs mauling something is where they're actually grabbing hold and shaking and all that sort of stuff. We think of it as being the blood side of it, the tearing side of it, but in actual fact it's the forcefulness of it is where it comes from. Okay, so she'd seen this mallet up there in the beam overhead, so that's a beam underneath the floor, top of the cellar. And she began a thinking, and she thought it was very dangerous to have that mallet there, for she said to herself, suppose him and me was to be married, and we was to have a son, and he was to grow up to be a man and come down into the cellar to draw the beer, like as I'm doing now, and the mallet was to fall on his head and kill him. What a dreadful thing it would be. And she put down the candle and the jug and sat herself down and began a-crying. Well, they began to wonder upstairs how it was that she was so long drawing the beer, and her mother went down to see after her, and she found her sitting on the settle. That's, the hard wooden seat. Often has a bit of a back to it, often by a fireplace in old houses. I've shown them to you before. Sitting on the settle crying, and the beer running over the floor. Maybe she left the tap open. Why, whatever's the matter? Said her mother. Oh, mother, she says, look at that horrid mallet. Suppose we was to be married and was to have a son, and he was to grow up and was to come down to the cellar to draw the beer, and that mallet was to fall on his head and kill him. What a dreadful thing it would be. Dear, dear, what a dreadful thing it would be, said the mother, and she sat her down beside her daughter and started a-crying too. Then after a bit the father began to wonder that they didn't come back, and he went down into the cellar to look after them himself, and there they too sat a-crying, and the beer running all over the floor. Whatever is the matter, says he. Why, says the mother, look at that horrid mallet. Just suppose if our daughter and her sweetheart was to be married and was to have a son, and he was to grow up and was to come down into the cellar to draw the beer, and the mallet was to fall on his head and kill him. What a dreadful thing that would be. Dear, 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 so it would, said the father, and he sat himself down aside of the other two and started a-crying. Good to see you, Coleslaw. Now the gentleman got tired of stopping up in the kitchen by himself, and at last he went down into the cellar too, to see what they were after. And there they three sat a-crying, side by side, and the beer running all over the floor, because the barrel has been tapped. The tap is open to fill up the container she's meant to take the beer upstairs with, and she's left the tap open because she was running it when she saw the mallet. And he ran straight up and turned the tap to stop the beer. Then he said, whatever are you three doing, sitting there crying and letting the beer run all over the floor? Oh, says the father, look at that horrid mallet. Suppose you and our daughter was to be married and was to have a son, and he was to grow up and was to come down into the cellar and draw the beer, and the mallet was to fall on his head and kill him. And then they all started a-crying worse than before, but the gentleman burst out laughing and reached up and pulled out the mallet. And then he said, "I've travelled many miles and I've never met such 3 big sillies as you 3 before, and now I shall start out on my travels again, and when I can find 3 bigger sillies than you 3, then I'll come back and marry your daughter." So he doesn't want to have the least thinking woman in the world for his wife. He wants someone who's not the slowest on the uptake. So if he finds someone who's a bigger silly, 3 bigger sillies, then he'll come back and marry her. So he wished them goodbye and started off on his travels and left them all crying because the girl had lost her sweetheart. Well, he set out and he travelled a long way, and at last he came to a woman's cottage that had some grass growing out of the roof, and the woman was trying to get her cow to go up a ladder to the grass. And the poor thing durst not go, so the gentleman asked the woman what she was doing. "Why, look ye," said she, "look at all that beautiful grass. I'm going to get the cow onto the roof to eat it. She'll be quite safe, for I shall tie a string round her neck and pass it down the chimney, and tie it to my wrist as I go about the house, so she can't fall off without my knowing it." "Oh, you poor silly," said the gentleman, "you could cut the grass and throw it down to the cow." But the woman thought it was easier to get the cow up the ladder than to get the grass down, so she pushed her and coaxed her and got her up and tied a string round her neck and passed it down the chimney and fastened it to her own wrist, and the gentleman went on his way. But he hadn't gone far when the cow tumbled off the roof and hung by the string tied around her neck, and it strangled her, and the weight of the cow tied to her wrist pulled the woman up the chimney, and she stuck fast halfway and was smothered in the soot. Well, that was one big silly. And the gentleman went on, and he went on to an inn to stop the night, and they were so full at the inn that they had to put him in a double-bedded room, and another traveller was to sleep in the other bed. So, double-bedded, 2 beds in the room. And another traveller was to sleep in the other bed. The other man was a very pleasant fellow, and they got very friendly. "Hi, how are you? Good to see you, Lemon. Great to have you here too." The other man was a very pleasant fellow, and they got very friendly together. But in the morning, when they were both getting up, the gentleman was surprised to see the other hang his trousers on the knobs of the chest of drawers and run across the room and try to jump into them. And he tried over and over again and couldn't manage it, and the gentleman wondered whether he was doing it, whatever he was doing it for. At last he stopped and wiped his face, because it was quite strenuous work, with his handkerchief. "Oh dear," he says, "I do think the trousers are the most awkward kind of clothes that ever were. I can't think who could have invented such things. It takes me the best part of an hour to get into mine every morning, and I get so hot. How do you manage yours?" So the gentleman burst out laughing and showed him how to put them on, and he was very much obliged to him and said he should never have thought of doing it that way. So that was another big silly. He should try a kilt indeed. That was another big silly. Then the gentleman went on his travels again, and he came to a village, and outside the village there was a pond, and round the pond was a crowd of people. Yes, my shirt is a callback to something. Is it 5 years ago? I don't know how long ago it was. But this is the same shirt that son of Jev, or PJ, has. He's got his version. I've got my version. And I was the one who called it online on Twitter and said, "We need that as a shirt." And then others took up the call as well. That's it. That's the one. Oh, yes, I know this one. Then the gentleman went on his travels again, and he came to a village, and outside the village there was a pond, and round the pond was a crowd of people. Hi, Blue. Great to have you here. And they had got rakes and brooms and pitchforks reaching into the pond, and the gentleman asked what was the matter. "Why," they said, "matter enough. Moon's tumbled into the pond, and we can't rake her out anyhow." So the gentleman burst out laughing and told them to look up into the sky, and that it was only the shadow in the water. But they wouldn't listen to him and abused him shamefully, and he got away as quick as he could. So there was a whole lot of sillies, bigger than them 3 sillies at home. So the gentleman turned back home again and married the farmer's daughter. And if they didn't live happy forever after, that's nothing to do with you or me. What a hilarious version of it. I know that I've heard a version of the story which is just about the villagers and the moon and the pond, but not as part of a bigger story. I don't know if you've heard that version before. It's a new one to me. I'm eating my grape sherbet things that are in the licorice section at the supermarket, but are nothing to do with licorice. I know what I was going to find you. A picture of jet plane lollies. Because I mentioned them. I'm loving these different stories too. Really enjoying them. Let's find a good shot of them. They're not quite the shape you'd expect them to be, being called jet planes. It's quite amusing. No, I want one that's clearer than that. That one's a better one. Save image. Is this a collection of short stories? Yes, it is. Now, itchy eye. Last week when I was reading the weird and wonderful folk tales of from various books in the lead up to Halloween, there were stories I read from this book, which is English Fairytales, and the sequel to it, which is more English Fairy Tales, and they were collected up by a chap called Joesph Jacobs, who actually was an Australian, which I find highly amusing. Totally not what I was expecting. That's a better one. And so I had been looking up these stories, found a whole lot of them, but I also realized that I wanted to be able to show you guys, to read you some more stories now. And I thought, well, an easy way to do it is actually just to read more from the books. Sorry, my picture's not on the side where it usually is. So these are jet planes. These are lollies. They're made out of gelatin and probably something else as well. So past shelves. So what I thought I'd do is actually just read more stories from these books, because it kind of fits in with the whole old books, because they are old books. This one was published in 1890 and the guy died quite some time ago, so it does actually fit. So these are a very New Zealand lolly. These are called jet planes, and they're a gelatin-based lolly, a little bit like wine gums, kind of like gummy bears, but not. Gummy bears are way chewier than these. The texture of these is more like the ones that we're used to in New Zealand for any gum-based lollies. Gummy bears, most of us, we enjoy them, but they're tougher. You don't actually enjoy the texture of, you bite into it, you've got the resistance, but then it actually, you get to chew them up a bit more. Gummy bears are a bit more rubbery. So these are jet planes, and I realised the other day when I was thinking about them that they're based on the shape of the Concorde. Nothing like a standard plane. You can actually buy some other lollies that are called planes or aeroplanes or something, but they're not this shape. They look like the normal ones that are oval with a wing across like that. So, yeah, all the candies. All the candies. Wine gums are pretty not chewy to begin with. We have those, but in dino shapes. Yeah. So this is more the style of gum-based lollies that we prefer in New Zealand. I did find out when I was trying to find out how the textures are produced for different lollies, because I like the texture of these. As a lolly, As a sweet, as a candy, I prefer these sort of textures for something to eat rather than something hard. There's something very satisfying with being able to squeeze it between your teeth, but then your teeth do go through it. It's very satisfying. Whereas the gummy bears, I find it's like chewing gum for quite a while before you get to the stage where it starts to break down. Wine gums in New Zealand, it depends on the brand as to whether they're not very chewy to begin with or not. Past shelf date saying in the 50s, my dad flew fighter jet, the F3J Skyray, which had a delta wing like that. Yeah, there are obviously more than just Concorde that has this sort of a shape, but it is what used to be referred to as jet planes. Before the days of normal planes having a jet engine on them, that shaped plane, the delta-shaped plane, were the ones that were most commonly known to have the jet engines. It's just one of those quirks. As the jet lollies are stubbier than the Concorde, they look a lot more like the Skyray. Yes, I think so. Absolutely. And also with a gum shape, it's going to be hard to get that pointy nose that you get on Concorde. But most of us in New Zealand, we would have only known Concorde as a shape rather than the Skyray. If you want to see an interesting story, go watch the Canadian jet that was scrapped. It's a documentary. Oh, that sounds interesting. Definitely have to have a look at that sometime. So I thought the other day, because I had been eating various lollies and talked about different things, that I should actually stop and share a bit of that sort of stuff with you. So what I will do at some stage is get a range of different typical New Zealand lollies and share them with you, show you what they look like, all that sort of stuff. I'm just going to copy that link so I have access to it later. Don't worry about it not being pretty. So I thought if I get some of these lollies, the Avro Arrow, the name is familiar. It's because of the bit that's highlighted that it did that weird looking bit. Free on YouTube under Avro Arrow. That's cool. Yeah, very, very amazing planes, really, if you think about it. Very revolutionary in their own way. So I thought I will try and get a few more bits and pieces that are very specifically New Zealand things, or New Zealand, Australia, or New Zealand, England and Australia, you know, that sort of stuff. Stuff that's more specific to the cultural background that I come from, and show you about them, tell you about them, that sort of thing. So and the reason I thought of that was because I had made a comment on our Discord server and Lemon had replied. I had been saying candy flavours Kiwis find interesting: cherry, grape and watermelon. Now, the reason why we find them interesting, as in slightly odd, is because those are not common flavours in New Zealand, and that was part of the conversation. And the reason why I had mentioned that was because I had got these, which are grape flavoured, and I had eaten some of those hard ones when I was eating the ones out of the cauldron, and they had cherry flavoured ones and they also had watermelon flavoured ones. And that was when I'd realised, I was eating them in the middle of the night, which is when I left the comment on Discord. I realised that they're slightly odd for a Kiwi palate. And the reason they're slightly odd for a New Zealand sense of taste is because they're not actually common flavours that we use in New Zealand. So like these don't sell as well as the standard licorice because grape flavour is not a standard flavour in New Zealand. Yeah, grape flavour reminds me of medicine, says Lemon. I have no idea what it reminds me of, except for being in Canada, I think, when I was a little kid. So the flavours were all familiar, but not really familiar. They were ones that gave me vague hints of memory from when I was a little child over in Canada, because Mum and I went over to Canada when I was 3, I think it was, and we were over there for like 6 months or something like that. Yeah, and grape is and sultanas for you apparently, and that's not how the medicine tastes. No. No. Dried grapes become sultanas and raisins, but they don't taste like grape flavoured candy. Trust me on that. They do not taste like grape flavoured candy. Sultanas and raisins. We were also having a discussion about sultanas and raisins because we were talking about fig Newtons, which we don't have in New Zealand. We have fruit fingers. Fruit fingers are this pillow-shaped biscuit, not a cookie, which in they're the equivalent of fig Newtons, but they're not made with figs. They're made with grapes or sultanas, fruit fingers. Yeah, as in fingers. I'll see if I can find you a picture. And now I'm getting pictures of people poking their fingers into fruit. Come on, give me the actual bickies. Sorry. Bickies is New Zealand nickname for biscuits. Come on. I want the actual fruit fingers, not the packet. They're not actually currently on the market in New Zealand. I'm not quite sure why. It's just one of those quirks. I will find you a picture of the packet and then you can kind of see what I'm talking about. There they are. And every time I'm trying to find them, they keep showing me other fruit biscuits that are similar but not the same. And I can't actually make this one any bigger, sorry. Actually, open that and then another. No, I asked you to open that in another window, another tab. Okay, that's better. I'm quite used to tapping around and no, that's not going to give me a bigger one in either. Right, I'm quite used to tapping around on the URLs of when I'm doing searches for things. So these are fruit fingers, and I will make it bigger so you can see what I mean by them being kind of like fig Newtons. See what they look like here? These ones are filled with apricot. We can kind of still get these, but when I was growing up and when I was a few years ago, a little bit younger, they had these, but they were with sultanas or raisins. I'm not sure which in the middle of them. I think we have them here in Canada, says Coleslaw. So these are not fig Newtons, these are apricot fruit fingers. But I did know when I was growing up that fig Newtons looked something like this. They're the ones I refer to when I'm trying to describe them to anyone else as looking like pillows. Can you see it? Can you see that that's a pillow shape? Yeah, of course. That's why. Yeah, and I know they're filled with figs over there. That was another part of our discussion that we had the other day. I think it's because to get figs in New Zealand for commercial use, they are usually imported from places like Turkey, and we don't have a huge amount of interest in eating figs dried or fresh in New Zealand. They are used as an ingredient, but they're not used as much as raisins and sultanas, because raisins and sultanas in New Zealand, the dried grapes, you know, red grapes and white grapes, the dried grapes do not have seeds in New Zealand, the raisins and sultanas. That's just the sort we get. Whereas the figs, you can't have figs without the seeds. And so a lot of people in New Zealand don't like the grittiness of the seeds. And as Lemon had already said, she likes the texture. So I can totally understand that, and I love figs. It's just that we don't import them in quite such the sort of bulk quantities as what we do raisins and sultanas. Those are a more common import for us in New Zealand. And no, we don't grow them here in New Zealand. We don't grow enough of anything like that to produce them for commercial use. You may get some small place that does them for their own usage and dry them as well, but generally no, we will import that sort of thing just because it's going to be effectively cheaper than trying to grow it and make sure it survives, because our climate is too damp for a lot of that sort of Mediterranean stuff to grow well. Grapes, they're reasonable, although we'll import raisins from California or sultanas from the Middle East. But grapes themselves, from producing wine or grape juice, we produce that here in New Zealand, In fact, we export wine and we export a lot of it, and it's highly regarded overseas. But things like figs, to grow them commercially, you need it. They like a certain amount of warmth. They like a certain amount of moisture at the right time of year, and our rain patterns are not predictable. Yeah, in theory, it's wetter in winter, but sometimes it will be dry in winter, and sometimes we'll have a week of rain in summer and things like that. And then you get the humidity, and with humidity, you get mildew on plants. Fig trees get mildew, plant mildew, very, very easily, and so therefore it's not going to produce reliable crops. The seed taste, all the pops, absolutely. I totally get what you like about them, Lemon. I really do like figs. They are some of my favourite fruit. Fresh figs, when they are right on the cusp of being too ripe but not quite, and they're all soft and juicy inside. Yum. So Lemon's saying the best figs I had up here in the Pacific Northwest were grown in a greenhouse. Yeah, Pacific Northwest, probably outdoors isn't quite hot enough in all year round. In winter, when it's cold, it's not so much of a problem, as long as the trees aren't going to get frosted too much, I think, because the woodiness of them is nowhere near as hard as, say, normal stone fruit and things like that. And that's the other thing, is if you're growing them in a greenhouse, you can get a lot more crops per year if there's enough warmth in there. So yeah, that would be really, I remember having figs at the supermarket when we were over in England. Before we came back to New Zealand, we spent a month living in the city with some friends of ours, and there was a little supermarket just up the road, and it was obviously a time of year where I was missing certain sorts of fresh fruits. I tend to buy things seasonally because they're cheaper, but while we were there, when I went up to do some grocery shopping, I saw a little packet, like a little mini egg box, of 4 fresh figs. They were ripe, they were ready to eat, they were just about to split their skins. They were a nice dark purple version. Different varieties have different shades of colour to them when they're fully ripe. And then not the sort of price I would normally pay, but it was just like I needed this fresh fruit, and the popping of the seeds and and the texture. Oh my goodness. So I got them. I think I ate most of them, and I did share 1, maybe 2 with the others in the family, but they were not so mad on them, so I enjoyed them. Some people don't like the sappiness in them. They've got the sticky sap when you get up near to the stem. It's just one of those quirks of that sort of fruit. So my intention is to read some more of these stories in this book and maybe the sequel to it. I'm not necessarily going to read the whole book. Excuse me. Goriki does this with the Japanese fairy tales. He doesn't necessarily read a whole book. He'll read several stories, maybe several times. He will read, have several reading sessions in a row from the Japanese fairy tales that he reads, but not necessarily the whole book, because this has got a lot of stories in it. In fact, I wonder if I can see how many stories it's got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Yes, I can count. 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 44 stories. And they're not all short either. So I'm thinking that I'll read more stories from this one, and then I'll read some from the More Stories book, and then maybe from some of the other books that he's done, or other ones from the same collection of books that I picked up for the lead up to Halloween. And from there, actually, we'll come back, we'll revisit those books at some future date, which is cool, because then I can actually cobble together, if I do stories just from one book each time and then change books in a different stream, then I can actually gather them up into playlists again, like I have with the normal storybooks that I read. Thank you, past shelf date. That's good. I'm wondering if it's the one that I've just seen recently on Twitter. I'm not going to say, but thank you for the warning that you have put a cartoon in there. Actually, oh no, it's a completely different one to what I'm expecting. I'm going to read out, maybe, hang on a minute. Oh, that looks really good. I'm not going to read it out now. I'm going to be a big meanie and bait you all to get you over to my Discord server. And if you're not already there, here's the link for it. Go and join it. Agree to the various terms that you. Oh, you created it. Excellent. Wonderful. I'm looking forward to reading it. That's excellent. So my intention is we'll read some more folk tales at different stages, but somewhere along the line, not necessarily doing the folk tales, but just in general with me streaming, I will see about picking up various things that are Kiwiana, Kiwi foods, sweets, lollies, candy, whatever word you want to use for it. Just like I'm having the L&P drink. I showed you the bottle one day, all that sort of stuff. I'm also going to maybe share a little bit about some of the other foods that we enjoy here in New Zealand. Some of them are because we come from culturally, the European aspect of New Zealand comes from a largely British background. There's a lot of others as well, but that's where the majority of people originally came from, was Great Britain. And I say Great Britain because it's Scotland, Wales, Ireland, Northern Ireland, as well as England. And I'm not going to get political about which is which. So there's foods that come from that general spread of places. We don't have as strong an influence regionally from different cultural backgrounds coming into New Zealand, the same way that, say, parts of Australia have, or even parts of the States. Like in the States, you get some places where, no, I don't do mushy peas. That's an English thing I don't do. I know what they are, but I don't do them. I can get them at the supermarket sometimes, but I don't need to. Where's the mushy peas along the side? Yeah, you go for takeaways over in England, and they ask if you want mushy peas alongside, and it's tinned peas that have been mashed up, so it's a paste. But you buy them in the tin already mashed up, but originally it was like tinned peas that have then been mashed up. I'm familiar with the flavour of tinned peas. We used to have them on the boat because it was an easy way for having effectively vegetables, but not having to keep them fresh because we didn't have a refrigerator. Can you ask for solid peas? No, you can only get mushy peas. And they wouldn't be referred to as solid peas, they'd just be unmushy peas. But yeah, you used to be able to buy tinned peas, like you can get tinned tomatoes and lots of other things, water chestnuts, baby sweet corn, all that sort of stuff. Roll them into little balls again. Yeah, that would be a bit of a laugh. So I'm thinking I'll share some various foods, especially the sweets, the candy, the lollies, because that's an easy one and I can snack on it, but also just talk about different foods and stuff. And sometimes, especially with these stories that we've got, we may come across different foods that are mentioned along the way. Like I was going to say to you something about meat pies. New Zealand, meat pies. I've got I'm no good at hunt and peck typing. I'm so used to having both hands on the keyboard that I get so many mistakes when I'm typing with one finger. So, that's a good way to show it to you. In some countries, a pie is generally a dessert pie. Oh, let's go out for coffee and a pie. And some pie. That's because the place you're going to bakes pies, and then you buy a slice of it and you sit there and you eat it with whipped cream or ice cream and eat your pie. And it's usually a fruit pie of some sort, like a cherry pie. We don't have cherry pies because cherries are They grow in one part of New Zealand and they're super expensive. They're very yummy though. So it's just one of those things. That's the way it works. We basically, because we have to pay for freighting everything to New Zealand. And so often there's things like various fruits where it might be grown in New Zealand, but not in a big enough quantity to make it actually a viable, sorry, I'm trying to find this picture again so I can get the handle and resize it, to make it a viable food item to be able to have available easily for most people. So here we go. These are meat pies, and these are the sort of pies that we talk about in New Zealand if you ask for a pie. And they are individually sized. They're about this big, about half the size of your face, depending on the size of your face. This one here, I can tell you now, this is a mince and cheese pie. So it's ground beef, if you're North American, minced beef, mince, not fruit mince, but mince, in a gravy, and then it's got a layer of cheese along the top, and then it's baked. And the pie crust, a good pie, will be with flaky pastry. So yum! You know the food term umami? Yeah, well, we know umami. We just don't use the term. It's just so yum, very yum. And my favourite are steak and cheese. And a good pie, the meat will not be tough. Will not be tough. You can get chicken pies, you can get vegetable pies, you can get curried chicken pies, curried vegetable, you can get steak pies, you can get steak and pepper, steak and mushroom, steak and cheese, all sorts of things. Really, really yum. Beans on toast is very nice if you like beans, like baked beans on toast. All sorts of things. I'm just going to go back and read some more of these comments. Enjoyed canned peas as a child, but what we really loved was Moe's Cal-Mex dinners with tinned refried beans with cheddar. Oh, yum. I get refried beans for one of my family members because he really loves them. But the plain ones are a bit boring, so what he likes are the ones that have got they've usually got the smoked dried chili, but then it's reconstituted itself because it's in liquid. What's it called? Chipotle or chipotle pepper. There's one of those in the middle of the refried beans, and it's really yum. So he will often eat those as a snack, just straight out of the tin. Steak and cheese pie right now. I know, Squibble, I'm just so hungry for a pie, and I thought that yesterday too. That would be really, really nice. Beans on toast are good if you can cope with the texture of the grittiness that's in whole beans. Some people don't do well with it, but otherwise they're great. Lemon's saying, I bought some Heinz beans the other day for brekkie. I honestly don't know if I can wait until the weekend to make it. Good on you. Go for it. And if it's not something for others, if it's not something you've had before and you're not so keen on the flavour, because sometimes the sauce isn't quite to your taste, 1, grind pepper into it. 2, think about whether it needs a little bit more salt. It probably doesn't. 3, maybe put a little bit of grated cheese in it, especially a strong flavoured cheese if you've got it. All of those things can actually help. I have brekkie sausages, Heinz beans, can't wait for the quarter full English breakfast. Full English, yeah, breakfast is going to be yum. I got ones with bacon. I think they're better. They probably have a lot more flavour to them. They're probably more like what we would call from a recipe Boston baked beans. We don't make them, but I've come across the recipe. And it's a recipe for making baked beans, but it's the style I used to make in Boston, so it's got smoky bacon influencing the flavour, whereas the standard tinned New Zealand ones are not so yum. Yeah, a strong sharp cheese to counteract the savoury beans. Yeah, absolutely, that would work really well. So these are meat pies. These are a common staple for buying lunch if you're out, because you can hold it in your hand in its little brown paper bag. You know, push the pie up so the top half is sticking out of the paper bag underneath, and then you eat it once it's not too hot and going to burn your mouth. Okay, don't burn your mouth. If you ever come to New Zealand and you are not vegetarian, then make sure you get a meat pie. They are yum. We're very good at them, especially if you get them from a place where they have had a standout bakery, because all of the other pies in that area will be excellent because they have had to compete, and so they've learnt to make good pies, and they tend to keep that standard up because then they are known also for making good pies. Yeah, they are part of the New Zealand experience, but they're part of the New Zealand experience because we eat them, not just because it's like, oh, well, when you're in New Zealand, you ought to. Other places, you know how I was talking about the big pies that you go and get a slice of pie with a cup of coffee or whatever. New Zealand perception is pies are a dessert. New Zealand perception of American pies is that they are a dessert and you get them when you go out. And that they are only sweet pies. Other places, they will talk about having a pie, but it will still be what they call a family-sized pie. But most New Zealanders, when they talk about having a pie, they're talking about having a single portion. And it will be a full lunchtime meal on its own. You don't really need any more than that. Unless you're a super hungry big eater. Like when my son was doing, working as an arborist, that sort of thing. You can make them at home, but there's a lot of work because you've got to cook the meat, develop the gravy. I don't like cooking things 3 or 4 times to make a single dish, whether it's a single serving or multiple servings. I love lasagna, real lasagna, as a dish, as a dinner, but I can't be bothered making the equivalent of spaghetti bolognese and then cheesy white sauce. So spaghetti bolognese is a whole meal on itself in our house. But then to make lasagna, I have to then take spaghetti bolognese, which is already a meal, and turn it into lasagna, which means making a cheesy white sauce, putting the sauce together and the lasagna, and then baking it in the oven. It's like I've had to cook a meal twice, but I'm still only getting 1 meal out of it. And it's like, yeah, too much work normally. If you have leftovers, then make lasagna out of the other half of the meat sauce, because I just use my bolognese sauce. It's basically just a tomatoey minced meat saucy thing that's because I never do meatballs. Spaghetti and meatballs, no. Anyone I know who's had anything to do with Italy, they didn't do meatballs. It was just not for that sort of thing. It's a tomatoey sauce with the meat in it, so that sort of thing. Anyway, I can't think of anything more to do with the pies that I need to show. I'm making myself hungry. I'm looking at pictures of meat pies. I should stop doing this. It's terrible. I'm getting hungry. So Coleslaw is saying, my mum gets the cheap frozen lasagna. I haven't had a real one in a long time. Yeah. Oh, I know where I got one once recently. I have an account with a commercial food supplier, like cafe ingredients for cafes and stuff like that, but they also do some pre-prepared stuff. And during the lockdown here in New Zealand, they actually had it set up so that you didn't have to apply for an account with them. If you are a home user, they would still deliver to you, but you had to pay a delivery fee. But as long as you could pay with a credit card or a debit card, you could buy from them. And I can still buy from them because I used to buy from them years ago. And they do a 1 kilogram of frozen lasagna. And so I bought one. It was still cheaper than me making it with all the ingredients involved and the prices and stuff, because I don't buy cheap, nasty mince because it's always got tough bits in it. You get decent mince. And you also don't have to drain as much liquid off it, which is all weight that you're throwing away. If you're cooking your minced beef and there's a whole lot of liquid comes out of it, next time when you buy your beef, buy the next grade up, the better grade up. You will not have as much liquid that you have to tip off. Seriously. That's liquid that you've paid for. It's just water. Why do it? Okay. Sorry, rant over. We always cooked our red sauce overnight or more. I'd sneak a bowl after the first 3 hours or so, but it always tasted better after the first full 12 to 15 hours she cooked it for. That sounds wonderful. Lemon, do you have, even if it's just your own notes, a recipe for this red sauce? Because when I make spaghetti, it's just like a half-hour job. It's nothing like that. It sounds really good. It sounds more like it's actually cooking time than anything else, the way Lemon's talking about it. But yeah, that would be really yummy. I love how this has become a cooking show. This is an everything show. And I'm still looking at these pies over on my other monitor. Oh, but yeah, they're a handful size. Give me a few days and I'll come up with a recipe. Excellent. I love the sound of that. I'm looking forward to it. In fact, it's making me even hungrier. I'm trying to figure out what I'm having for dinner tonight. It's just me and one of the other family members because the other one doesn't eat on a Wednesday. And it's like, oh, what food are we going to have tonight? We tend to shortcut it a lot on a Wednesday night because of that. Because the other one's the serious eater in terms of they have to, because the way they function, they're not diabetic, but they're probably someone who, when they've been doing something really intensely, suddenly have the end of their blood sugar and then they crash, basically, mentally, emotionally they crash. So past shelf date saying, I'm trying to think of cartoons I've drawn that feature food or cooking. Wonderful. I'm really going to enjoy looking at these ones that you're sharing with us over on the Discord. Hint, hint to anyone who's not yet in our Discord server. Even though I created over 300 comic strips under the name Pizza from Scratch, originally about cats who ran a pizza parlour. That sounds like a wonderful idea for our shelf date. I didn't really draw what used to be called pizza pies. This is the first of a triptych inspired by Blazing Saddles by Mel Brooks. I am looking forward to the fun of having a look at your wonderful creations that you've got there. That's lovely. Trying to think if there was anything else I needed. Thank you, Aranel, that's good. I'm happy to make sure that most of my commands for the information links that I give you guys are available for any of you to be able to post, just because it's not really something that's going to cause problems. Some people have all of those sort of links only available for moderators, and it's like, yeah, but why? Why wouldn't you let other people in your chat share this within the community? We're all looking after each other. It's like, yeah, why wouldn't you? Anyway, so what else? Was there any other food things I can mention while I'm here? Sausage meat? I think that's what we're having for dinner. It's like the insider sausages. Oh, yeah, Joel and I, son of Jev and I, PJ and I will laugh sometimes because I'll find a recipe for something and it says, take this many sausages and take the meat out of the skins. And I'm like, well, why didn't you just buy sausage meat at the supermarket or the butcher's? Why buy sausages that are already in the skins and then have to take them out? That's so messy. And then I realized, well, okay, maybe some places they don't have it. Maybe they've never thought to ask at the butchers if they can get just the meat without the skins. We get it. It comes in a little plastic tube. It's about 1/2 kilo of the meat that they make to make the sausages, the proper ones where you can see the texture of the breading and the finely ground meat, and you get these textures in there, and they're really yummy sausages actually, because our local supermarket, one of the butchers there, the head butcher who used to be there, he's now retired, actually had been he's part of a family that had been the local butchers in their own business for 100 years or so. And our local supermarket has the right to continue making sausages using their particular sausage meat recipe. And so we do. I've got a friend, I've mentioned it before, I've got a friend who came up one time, my daughter's friend, but I'm a friend with her too, came up and stayed with us one time, and she kind of said to my daughter, I hope you don't mind, but I don't really eat sausages. And so my daughter said to her, oh, that's okay. There's enough other food for dinner tonight. This is while we're at the table and there's food on the table. And I'm just going to save your recipe description here. Copy. Yeah, you could do that. You could stream it even. And then save it as a highlight. And then it's permanently available. Anyway, so what was I going to say? So she said, politely to my daughter, she doesn't eat sausages, and Anita said, that's okay. So we're sitting there, and the girl's going, smells quite good, and just left it at that. And Anita said, So she cut hers up, or usually cut when they're on your plate, cut them up a little bit so they cool down because they've just come out of a hot pan. And he says, here, at least try one. I mean, you can spit it out if you don't like it. Obviously, it's not a problem. Just spit it out on the side of your plate and leave it there. None of us are going to mind. Sneaky girl. So the girl had stabbed one of these pieces of sausage and just sort of had a bit of a go at eating it. And then it's like she's reaching out and getting herself a sausage out of the serving dish in the middle of the table. And then she went for another one. It's like, oh, these are good. And then he said, yeah, whenever, you know how I said whenever I come home I have sausages for dinner? This is why. These are real sausages. They're not super, super meaty. So I've had sausages from other places where they're really meaty. But these ones are just, they're an excellent balance between the meatiness and the other stuff that helps with the texture and the flavour. Anyway, so one of these days I'll stream again, says Lemon. That's, yeah. When it works for you, Otherwise, yeah, video it. That'll be cool. I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, this sounds yummy. I'm going to have a proper read of it though so I can do something with it. So one of the other because I'd said, was there anything else? Any unique drinks? Yeah, we have unique drinks. In fact, I'm not going to ask coleslaw, okay? Hint, hint. No, not asking, not going there. So Lemon's saying, I'm having brekkie sausages for dinner tonight. Go for it. Special drinks. In our area, we have a special drink. It's called Feijoa wine. Now, Feijoa. Do you know what a Feijoa is? Go on. Without looking it up, Feijoa. Feijoa. I doubt that my I'll try it, see if it does. I don't think it will have it in here. Word. Feijoa. It does! A South American evergreen shrub, Acaciloiana, whatever. Let's see if it's going to say something more about it. They were often used kind of like a hedge. No, that's the only one they've got. It's the fruit off those things. They're a plant that sort of grows often about this tall, but they can grow bigger than that if it's got the right conditions. But it's a fruit. It's a fruit off these trees. Let's see if I can find some appropriate pictures. They're similar to a guava, but they're a slightly gritty texture. Where's the right picture to show you? Yeah, I did that before. Yeah, they grow in New Zealand. They're originally from South America. They were actually imported into New Zealand. And I'm trying to find one that's got fruit and this one's probably a good picture to use. It's a thumbnail of YouTube because it shows the plant and it also shows the fruit. Yeah, I know you're helping. That's fine. Not a problem. Usually you have to open the link for it to give you a non-gobbledygook link. That's what that is. Now, come here, find my thing, and then find the other thing. There it is. The thing. So now I will put this over here where you can see it and make it a bit bigger. Right. I'm so used to having my pictures over on that side of me, obviously. So this is a little wee twig on the plant. There's more of them behind the chap over here. So those ones behind him are probably about shoulder high, maybe slightly less. And they're a twiggy little shrub. These are the fruit on them, and they have these little tufts of red, which are just the stamens and the pistils, no petals, a little bit like the Pohodakawa flowers, but the stamens are a lot shorter. So when they're flowering, that's the flower. It's just this little cluster of these little threads of red. And then this is the fruit. So they're roundish like this, kind of egg-shaped. and then this is one that's he's holding on to that's cut in half, and you use a teaspoon and you scoop out that inside like you would with a kiwi fruit. That's how we eat kiwi fruit, either squeezing it, biting it, ripping it open and squeezing the inside of the skin, or eating it straight with the skin, or scooping it out with a teaspoon. So these are feijoas, okay, and they're really yummy, quite unusual in some ways, slightly gritty. Oh, that's a nice picture. But where I live in New Zealand, we have these growing at a, it was originally set up as an organic orchard, and they specialised in these feijoas, and then they were getting so many of them, they decided that they were going to see what they could create with the fruit in the way of juice. Some parts of New Zealand, the trees are so prolific that you go to the library and there's a box there and there'll be some paper bags and you can help yourself to as many feijoas as you want. Or they're on this, yeah, it's the inside that's edible. That the darker bit there, that's right above my finger, that's kind of like a semi-clear gel with the seeds in it. Lovely little poppy seeds. I'm just going to give you another picture to show you. They are yum. Some people don't like them because they're quite a distinctive, quite a strong flavour. Like my father-in-law didn't like them because they were, I think it was the grittiness. So this is a feijoa tree. If you trim them, you can make them into a hedge and they were still fruit. And these are the flowers, but instead of on a pahudakā, the stamens are about that long. On a feijoa, they're about that long. So on a pahudakā, the red threads are a bit longer than my thumb, first joint on my thumb. On a feijoa, they're more like just the length of my thumbnail. Hard to show. Some people, yeah, I used to peel kiwi but switched to shaving the hairs off with a knife and eating them, peel and all, for even more vitamins. Really, really high vitamin and mineral levels in feijoas and kiwi fruit. The other thing you can do with them is you hold them under running water and rub them and then dry them with a tea towel, and that can get a lot of that fuzz off. Feijoas you can eat, skin and all. They're more tart if you eat them with skin. It's quite almost like a eucalyptus-y type of edge to the taste when you've got the skin in it as well. It's not actually eucalyptus, but it's kind of got that sort of edge to the smell and the taste when you've got the skin in them. I'm just trying to see if I can find something that shows you the inside of the fruit better so it looks more appealing. It is. It's very yummy. Anyway, so they started making these drinks out of it. They were also juicing apples and some other things and selling it as organic juices. And then they decided that they were going to try fermenting it and see what it would be like as if it was a wine. And so they did, and it's a sparkling wine that they make. Most of what they make is sparkling, and they do medium, they do dry. Most people who are not familiar with feijoa find the flavour a little bit just because it's not familiar. People who grew up with feijoas love it. So what we did was we used to take, when my in-laws had friends visiting from overseas, we'd take them to, there's an award-winning pub nearby, and we'd take them there, and yeah, it kind of does look a bit like Aussie foliage. It's the silveriness of it, I think. And we would take them there and get some feijoa bubbly. And with getting the feijoa bubbly, we would say to them, look, when you drink this, it's going to be quite strong. Taste it. But if you want, you can get it so it's half and half. We can buy some lemonade and you can have some half. It's really nice if you thin it down with lemonade, New Zealand lemonade, like Sprite or 7-Up equivalent, and it's yum that way. If the feijoa-ness of it is too strong, it's a great way to actually just modify that flavour. I'll show you one more picture of feijoas just because then you get a better idea of the scale. No, not that sort of scale. They don't stay, they size relative to their actual image dimensions when I put them up. And so if it's been a small picture. So there's someone scooping the insides out. And that's what you eat. But like I said, you can eat the skins as well. It's just a bit more tart. I'm just reading comments. Thanks for the link. It says past shelf date to lemon rinds. Thanks for the link. Our parents raised us to try every food and loved nearly all. That is a wonderful way to experience life, because you do actually discover things that you otherwise wouldn't have. And you can go somewhere and not be stuck for being able to eat. You're not like, oh, I'm going to starve for the next 2 weeks because I'm not at home where I can eat the things I normally eat. And past shelf date saying, I know the local Asian groceries sell canned grass jelly drinks. Oh, never heard of that before. Feijoa, yeah, there may be Feijoa canned. They sometimes get sold in New Zealand at the supermarket. The skins are quite thin, as you see just there. The skin itself is not a hard skin. It's not like tomato where you've got a layer that you can grab the edge of it and actually pull it off. But because of that, they're more fragile. Therefore, they haven't really gone into our supermarkets readily, but also, like, most people are growing them in the backyard because granddad put a shrub in and they don't know what to do with them all. So why is somebody going to pay for them at the supermarket? Kind of thing. Past shelf date. I will warn you that durian toffee is like sweetened used sweat socks. That sounds very appealing. I will not be looking for those ones at our local Asian food market. We've got they don't have fresh fruits, but they've got some frozen things. A local fruit and veg shop is actually run by an Asian family. It's part of a chain of these stores, and most of them are owned by Asian families in New Zealand, Chinese, or the previous owners were Chinese, Korean, mixed family sort of thing. And but because of that, and it's a fairly white area that I live in, there are other people who are moving into the area and they want to have a bit more diversity in what's available. And so these guys are actually making sure that they have a broader range of foods available. So if I want Chinese food ingredients or Japanese food ingredients, I'm just as likely to find it there I'm more likely to find it there than at the supermarket, but not fresh like butchery things, or we've got bok choy and pak choy and those sort of greens, but most of the other stuff that you don't actually easily get. But we do have some frozens that are made in New Zealand for us, and also they will have some imported foods. So that is our food lesson for today, is kiwi fruit not kiwi fruit, Feijoa. We talked about kiwi fruit last time, didn't we? One other time, not last time. And I was saying if you're going to have the fruit, call it kiwi fruit. It is one word, kiwi fruit, not a kiwi, because that is our endangered bird. It's our national bird. And I gave you that illustration of a picture of the back end of a kiwi fruit sliced with a kiwi head on the other end. Really cool. Anyway, somebody who decided they were going to share that, a different way of helping to remember that. I love being able to just sort of throw the information out there that you probably don't know. Kia ora to you too, Squibble. Hi, welcome, that sort of thing. It's kia ora has a really wide variety of meaning to it. Technically, it means hello and welcome, kind of, but it actually means be blessed with health and some other aspects to it. Māori language is a relational language. The way the words are put together in a sentence, you can't just pick a word and then just string them all together because of what this one means and what that one means. How the words relate to each other also affects what the meaning is of a sentence, and that's part of why I haven't actually learnt Māori, because I don't have the memory for holding these pieces together. So one time I was desperately trying to remember a welcoming statement that I could use, and I had looked it up and everything and I couldn't get it, and it was no, and now it's gone again. This is why I don't learn languages. Anyway, Heard kiwi fruit are very, very high in vitamin C. They are indeed. In fact, from what I understand, if you get a choice between golden kiwi fruit and green kiwi fruit, the green is the healthier one. People prefer the golden one because it's not quite as sharp flavoured. It's not as tart, but it's got a much broader vitamin and mineral spread of what's available in it. Anyway, might have been nau mai haere mai, which is basically welcome, welcome. But it's the wrong end of the stream. But that was the one that I was going to say one time in the lead up to. It was in, I don't know, doesn't matter. Anyway, been here for long enough and it's 5:30, so it's time to go and kete pai. Yeah, no, I think it was probably nau mai haere mai, or something similar to that one. I can't remember. I know lots of just little phrases or individual words and things like that. And that's it. Like kapai means good, like very good. Kapai, kai means good food. Kai, food, Kai. Kai moana, food of the ocean, seafood. Anyway, so I'm going to head off now and see you all next time. In the meantime, happy reading. Bye.